everybody to Claire's Epiphany. And in opening, may I say a few words. It's nice of all of you to come today and honor my mother. I really appreciate it. You are all so blessed and so loved by her. And she was a busy woman. She was a busy mother. She was the busiest mother I've ever met. My father was the busiest father I've ever met. And the two of them were the busiest retired couple. So they were very, very active. And my mother's inspiration is why we are all here today. I would like to start by introducing Sylvia Talarico, who was an honor student of my mother's in 1962. And becoming a high school teacher at Los Altos High School as well, which she largely attributes to my mother. Sylvia?
I wasn't recommended for honors English my freshman year. However, my freshman teacher said I'd been misplaced in her class, and at the end of the year she asked my counselor to put me in a more rigorous class the next fall. Now, the idea of joining an honors class was scary to me. I didn't know the people who had been in it the first year. I had no idea what they'd read or what they'd learned the previous year. I knew I was going to be with the smart kids, and I felt like a little fish in a very big pond. But I was wrong. Last fall, when it became clear that Claire would not beat her cancer again, I began to write her a letter, but I didn't finish it in time. This is a paragraph of what I wanted to tell her. Dear Claire, I felt comfortable in your class. You laughed with us, not at us, and sometimes at yourself. You treated us like the young adults we would soon become. I grew to look forward to your thoughtful comments on my papers. Your critiques were helpful, not hurtful. I came to know that you were on my side, and that encouraged me to take risks. The air in your room was very rarefied, and I knew it was probably at the bottom of the class when it came to skill and talent, but I didn't mind because you created a place where I learned not just from you, but from classmates that would become my lifelong friends. And I knew that some of their brilliance was bound to rub off on me. Now, she challenged us, and she let each one of us know she was certain that we were capable of rising to the occasion, and we believed her. She elevated us. She often selected an excellent paper written by one of her students and read it to the class. I vividly recall one assignment she gave us in 12th grade. It was to write a poem or short story in the style of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. She read my paper that time, and I knew I finally belonged. I was on the school campus last month with a friend of mine, the current principal, when she approached me. She asked if it was true that Claire had passed away. She said she had worked with Claire for several years and found her to be a force to be reckoned with. And she meant that as a compliment. Claire was an advocate for her students and for her fellow teachers. She believed all students should benefit from the most effective curriculum and teaching practices and worked hard to promote her point of view. It was a few years into my teaching career when writing across the curriculum was mandated. More short answer or essay questions were to be asked on exams, and fewer of the yes, no, or check the right box answers were to be used. In all classes, even PE, art, and woodshop. I bet money that Claire proposed this mandate. She could be very persuasive. Claire practiced what she taught us. To write persuasively, we needed to have a clear point of view, present facts, provide examples, and explain how our proposal could benefit others. When I began teaching, women teachers were required to wear dresses or skirts and blouses, no pants. It was Claire who convinced Principal Angus to support the pleas of the women faculty to allow them to wear slacks to work. She simply took him shopping to Nordstrom's and to show him how much his wife Barbara was paying for her dresses and how much he and the women faculty could save if they could pair 1 or 2 pair of slacks with an assortment of less expensive blouses and sweaters. Claire made her point. The principal liked potential financial benefits, and the dress code was changed. Claire, you were a role model for me and many other young women at Los Altos High School. You were a strong woman who managed to have a family and a fulfilling career that touched the lives of thousands of students and teachers. I was so blessed to be your student, your teaching colleague, and your friend. And before I introduce our next speaker, I just have to take a minute and point out that table with 3 former faculty from Los Altos High School. Ken Cruz, who taught history, Andy Brown, my colleague in the science department who taught biology, and David Cohn, my physics teacher. And now I'd like to introduce one of my other classmates and very dear friends, Leisha Hinian, also from the class of '62.
Already a hard act to follow. Thank you, Sylvia. I have no idea why Claire Pelton instructed her loving daughter Cathie to have me speak at this Epiphany. Certainly not for good behavior. Thinking our senior status made us special and quite clever, an unnamed classmate and I decided it would be fun and proceeded to cherry bomb Claire's house just before graduation. Dear Mrs. Pelton pleaded with Los Altos High School administration for forgiveness, but my classmate and I were not allowed to attend the graduation ceremony. Mrs. Pelton would give us reading report exercises and liked to set the bar high. I remember once she asked us to select and read an author we admired or were curious about, and then to write a paper about his or her works. I thought Sherlock Holmes was a fun character, so I proposed writing on the works of Arthur Conan Doyle. That was not my teacher's idea of a great author, and she nixed that plan. On our class website, many of you have contributed with your heartfelt memories of Mrs. Pelton, or Claire, as she more recently asked us to call her. I would like to share with you a few of those memories from 5 of my classmates. Steve Grant notes that in the panoply of fabulous Los Altos High School teachers, Claire Pelton was simply, inarguably, the best. Bonnie Hansberger Haskell remembers Claire's love of Shakespeare and her method of including her whole class in reading and reenacting the famous scenes. Bonnie laughs when she remembers those plays and says the appreciation for Shakespeare that Claire instilled has stayed with her for a lifetime. John Hughes Cayley, remembering Claire, quotes the journalist Sidney Harris. Most people are mirrors, reflecting the moods and emotions of the times. A few are windows, bringing light to bear on the dark corners where troubles fester. The whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. For us, Claire was our model window. And she always had practical advice. John, you're not writing a lab report, tell a story. Classmate Marianne Hoy sums it up. Claire was simply the essence of what a teacher should be. Rigorous, engaging, fun, and smart. Finally, reminding us that Claire was special beyond the classroom, our classmate Sharon Meredith again relates the following. My mother, Eleanor Meredith, loved her job as secretary of the Los Altos High School English department in the 1960s. She said she especially liked working for Claire, who was not only a beloved teacher, but the best boss ever, predictably cheerful and appreciative. It's amazing to me that at the time we experienced and inhaled the gifts of this marvelous teacher, Claire Pelton was only 28, 29 years old. Thank you, Claire, for your legacy. And now I'd like to introduce my classmate, Shelly Bowers.
Thank you very much, Pete. And thanks for bringing those other voices in the room. When I think about it, we were all classmates together in her class, and it's just nice to hear their voices too. So I've just done some serious editing so I can come in under time here, but I kept in the parts that I think are really the ones that really speak to who Claire really was for me. Okay. Our Odyssey began together on a September day now 64 years ago. And it's still, that image is still very clear, that first day in high school, a very stressful 7 hours filled with navigating a strange campus, meeting scary new teachers, some of whom are sitting right over there, filling out endless forms, the smell of those kind of newish textbooks, finding my way to Mrs. Pelton's classroom for sixth period. I think it was called accelerated English, right? Something like that. I was greeted at the door by a diminutive woman with a warm smile. Right away, I felt at ease and sensed that Claire was a teacher I would really like. I had no idea, of course, what lay ahead. Those high school years for me, Claire was a person I could count on to give me honest feedback about both my academic work and my growth as a person. I was a somewhat, sort of like Lee, I was a somewhat rambunctious student, and I really enjoyed livening up classes at times in very inappropriate manner, as some of you may remember. Claire took that all in stride. She admonished me in a way that never made me feel like I was bad. I would just kind of had extra spirit, as she said, her spirit. I think she saw a lot more in me than I saw in myself at the time, and she built on that. In many ways, she was a calming force in my teenage life, and I remember enjoying hanging out with her after class. With a number of us would sort of just wind up hanging out in class, just to be sort of hang out with her and talk and joke and smile. But boy, what a way to end the day in high school. You know, it was great. In that English class, I too, Sylvia, was definitely not the best student. But Claire continued to put time and energy into helping me improve, and she made it seem like I was really the only one that she was really paying that attention to, which is the magic of a good teacher. I was going to recall two incidents, but I think I'll only do one, because it really stands out to me. In our sophomore year, as Lee mentioned, Claire assigned us the task of selecting an author to study in depth and write an extensive paper for us. I think it was 10 or 15 pages about what we had discovered. Now, I'd become enamored of Hemingway, so the choice for me was very simple. I devoured For Whom the Bell Tolls, The Old Man and the Sea, Death in the Afternoon, Farewell to Arms, none of which I really understood, of course. Nonetheless, I waxed eloquent about all that I didn't understand, and produced what I considered to be a masterpiece of literary analysis. I could hardly wait to hear what Claire had to say. When I got back from Claire, this is blowing around here, so I'm going to have to hold it with this hand there. When I got back from Claire was later what a teaching colleague informed me was called a praise sandwich. She began by complimenting my obvious enthusiasm for the subject matter. Next, she remarked rather laconically, really, imagine, though, misspelling your author's name, exclamation point, exclamation point, end of comment. right? I'd add an extra M to his name throughout the entire paper. Model of consistency, at least. So she followed that by noting that my ideas were quite good, but then tempered them with a suggestion I think we always heard that we could have used more examples, right? And she finished with saying something about how my writing was improving or something like that. So that's a very typical praise sandwich, as they call it. It's a classic teaching method of giving kind of hard information, but in a soft fashion. And I'm going to have to pick this up just a second. Or maybe that's the one I eliminated. Are you going to fix this for me, Cathie? Thank you. Great. I'm going to not do that one. Anyway, that was a technique that I learned from her without even knowing it, that I used throughout my teaching career thousands and thousands of times. And it always works. It always works. Thank you, Cathie. I appreciate it. Over the ensuing post-high school decades, I saw Claire only infrequently, sometimes in Los Altos High, sometimes in San Jose at the district office, and later at her home. Nevertheless, we always reconnected as if there had been no gap in our relationship and chattered endlessly about teaching literature, art, politics, and life in general. The debt of gratitude that I owe Claire, I repaid by passing it on to my own students. Many of whom actually are now teachers. That understanding, respect, and love that she showed us all. In that way, part of her will live on into the future. So our next speaker will be Mac McConnell, not from our class of 1962.
Jerry neglected to say that I'm his elder by 1 year. I'm from the class of 1961. Well, I had two speeches to talk about Claire. This one was a long one, and I'm going to spare you that. Unfortunately, it had most of the examples that Claire would have wanted me to include, so it ran a little long. So I first met Claire as a student in her AP English class at Los Altos High School in 1961. And much later, over the past 6 years of her life, I had the good fortune to know her at occasional lunches at her home as a friend, I think. Claire was one of the most remarkable teachers I've ever known, and she was certainly a catalyst and a role model for me in ways that I've never forgotten. It's an honor to be asked to share a few of my memories of her with you today. The impact of that English class year with Claire, and it was just one class, has stayed with me for the rest of my life, and I'm sure that's true for my fellow classmates here as well. I most remember Claire's vivacity and her daily invitation to her students to not only read and recite from wonderful novels and poetry, but to also think through and criticize the ideas they contained. I think of Claire now as a master teacher. She engaged all of her students as if we were adults at a time in our lives when very few of us were. She was 28 years old, and I have to admit, pretty dazzling to the boys in her class. I was one of them. But we quickly learned that she was extremely smart, and she invited us all to share in her expansive world. Claire made it clear from the beginning that she expected us as students to think, to write, and to speak critically about the rich literature that we were going to experience with her every day. As the years passed after that one class of hers, I always thought I never had as fine a teacher as Cathie Pelton. I think that as our lives progress, we all have memories of one or two people we have known that we continue to draw on for confidence, for humor, and for wisdom. For me, Claire was the strongest of these inner voices, always encouraging curiosity, honesty, and most importantly, boldness of thought. And Claire was bold, if nothing else. I met Claire again 8 years ago at a Los Altos High School gym dedication for Dude Angus. Dude, as many of you here know, was a legendary coach, an inspiring principal, and a foundational educational leader for our school district. On that day, amazingly, after 55 years and from 2 crowded corridors away, I heard my name called out by a very familiar voice. It was Claire, of course, being pushed in her wheelchair by her beloved husband, Chuck. She had somehow recognized me in the far crowd after such a very long time, and it was truly a delight to see her again and to feel the same bright, light-hearted spirit that I remembered so well. That lucky meeting led to many lunches with Claire and with my old friend Rick Bale over her last years. Rick and I have always felt that these lunches were Claire's continued master classes for us in living life well and in lives well loved. Lastly, I'd like to say I believe people long persist through the memories of those who knew them. And in that way, I feel Claire is very much with us all today. So I'd like to thank Claire's daughter, Cathie, for inviting me to make these few comments and for the opportunity to meet with the many others of you who were part of Claire's life. Thank you. And, sorry, my old friend Rick Bale, who I left hanging out there, is the next speaker.
Okay, my name is Rick Bale. Can you hear me in the back? My name is Rick Bale. I have the great pleasure of being in Junior Accelerated English, 5th period, 1960. And in that class were Matt McConnell and Cindy Coltrane, if you knew the Coltranes. I don't think knew each other very well when we started the class. We've been lifelong friends since, and I think it had to do with that class. I'll read you the end of my talk first. The last line of my talk is, "She made life more interesting for us all." One thing I want to get clear right now is that I will not be referring to this person as Claire. She is for me Mrs. Pelton, and will always be. When I first met her, we started having lunch about 6 years ago, and she said, I said, Mrs. Pelton, it's good to see you. And she said, oh my God, please don't call me that. It makes me feel so old. And I says, something like, Mrs. Pelton, I'll try very hard. She was 56 years after we had that class. Mac and I traced her down, tracked her down, it wasn't too hard. And we had lunch at a local Los Altos Mexican restaurant. And she walked in, and I said, of course, hi, Mrs. Pelton. And we sat there. We had a lunch, started at 12:30, about 5:30 in the afternoon, and the waiter walked over and said, we stayed for dinner. And we hadn't noticed the time. So we started talking, and we kind of hit all the high spots. We had a lot of rumors and gossip about faculty members we wanted to clear up. I was going to tell some of those stories, and then I see some of the faculty there. So I did. But she dissuaded us from many of the stories, not true, which was a big disappointment, by the way. And then she confirmed some, which was really interesting. I would have liked to talk about those things. So we talked about politics, we talked about schooling, we talked about teaching, we talked about the Warriors, we talked about her crush on Stephen Curry. We talked about a lot of things, and this went on for a long time. And at some point, probably an hour, half an hour, maybe hour and a half in, she said, "Okay guys, what are you reading?" I thought, oh my God, this is 56 years, she's still my teacher. And Max said something like, a couple of Russian novels. He was currently working his way through the 33 Greek plays or something like that. And I had read a Tom Clancy novel the month before, so I had something to say, at least. So By the way, this talk is much simpler. That Claire isn't here, because if Claire was here, I'd be just dying over every word that I'm saying. We started emailing from that point on, and we would email back and forth about this and that, mainly politics, but Warriors. I gotta say, just for the same reason, I dreaded each of those emails. I absolutely dreaded them because I had to look over grammar, syntax, and sentence structure, construction, vocabulary. I mean, it just took me like an hour to write a short email. I regret that Cindy Colton isn't here. She sends her love from Portland, Oregon, which she just moved into this week. But she did say that she would send me a poem that she'd written about Mrs. Pelton. And I got it this morning, and I will read you that poem. Double, double, toil and trouble. Fire burn and cauldron bubble. Fillet of fenny snake in the cauldron boil and bake. Eye of newt and toe of frog. Wool of bat and tongue of dog. It's a nice poem. Really nice. Now some of you know that Cindy Colton probably didn't write that. Who did? Shakespeare? Okay, that's a good guess. And what play?
The Scottish tragedy. The Scottish tragedy.
The Scottish, yes, thank you. You will not name this
Yes.
play, the Scottish play. So, who mouthed the words? Who are the characters?
One of the witches.
How many witches were there?
Three.
Three? You were all talking about it. Okay. Cindy can recite those words to this very day. There are many classes that I took, from many times in the class I took, that I imprinted just sets piece, just paragraphs from things that I've read, that 62 laters are right in front of my mind. Cindy can recite that word for word, entire play. Diana, who is it? I think I have two things written down at the end. One that I wrote, I'm living a life of extra credit. That just seemed to me the legacy from her on me. It all feels like extra credit now. And I will repeat the one I started with, which is she made life more interesting for me, for my friends, for my colleagues. And, thank you, Mrs. Pelton. I'm to introduce somebody, but I don't know who. I think we're finished with students. Okay, Susan and Shannon.
Hello. I first met Claire when I was working for the College Board Western Regional Office. She wasn't working there yet at that time, but she had been chosen for an annual Distinguished Service Award, a series of awards that were given out each year to outstanding educators in the region who had made extraordinary contributions to the field in our region. I remember that her acceptance speech was very moving, and I admired her very much. She became more and more involved in regional activities, serving on several committees, and my admiration just kept growing. I was delighted when she was offered a position at our Western Regional Office, where she became the Director of Academic Services. As I began to know her better, my admiration kept growing. Her intelligence, dedication, and kindness were heartwarming, and our friendship grew. After she retired, we continued to keep in touch, and I was delighted to find out that she and her beloved husband, Chuck, had decided to start an AP Summer Institute, which is a week-long training for AP teachers. I was even more delighted when she asked me to help organize the event, which I did for several years, and I truly enjoyed it. As time went on, she started to slow down and ease up on her professional activities, but we still kept in touch and met regularly for lunch to catch up and have some laughs, which I always looked forward to immensely. One thing that we discovered early on that we had in common was a fascination and love for Hawaii. I had the good fortune to travel to Hawaii several times on College Board business, and I discovered that Claire and Chuck had been traveling there for years and even owned a timeshare there. When she learned of my addiction to Hawaii, she and Chuck immediately offered the use of their timeshare condo whenever we could schedule it. It was a truly great gift. My family and I spent many happy times there, and it was a favorite vacation for my son, which gave us a chance to do some real bonding during his adolescent years, which everyone knows can be quite challenging for a parent. Claire's kindness, intelligence, and loving spirit were a gift. I feel truly blessed.
We had white collar and blue collar, young and old, strollers and walkers. And it was like working and retired. We had the cycle of life represented at the park. And it was just extraordinary. And Chuck and Claire were always in the center of it. I know for sure, for most dogs, it was the happiest part of their day. But I think for many of us people, it was also the happiest part of the day. It would occur late afternoon or early evening, depending on the season. And the only adjustment for season was sometimes Claire would have a parka or a blanket. But rain or shine, winter, summer, we were there. And it was a wonderful thing to meet up every day and laugh and talk and catch up and become friends. We weren't without some problems. Sometimes the police would come and remind us of our criminality by letting our dogs off leash and actually have fun, and the occasional adult beverage. And we would, of course, dutifully leave the park, and we'd be back within days. It was just impossible to disband what we called the Lincoln Park Dog Club. Over time, of course, our friendships deepened, and it was more than the dogs and bigger than the dogs. We supported each other and relied on each other and helped each other. And I must say, Cassie's very last hour was in the dog park with Eric, Joanne, Claire, and Cathie. It was the place for her to eat, smell dog smells, have dog treats, and say goodbye to her friends. Lincoln Park Dog Club was that kind of special. And I think it's, broadly speaking, a metaphor for Claire's legendary love of dogs. If she told me many, many times, she met and fell for Chuck's dog Thor long before she met and fell for Chuck. And I think that was really a selling point for her. And their love wasn't abstract in any way. It was very tangible. They lived their values of loving dogs. And I'm going to need to check my list here because the list is so lengthy, but you're going to notice a pattern. Thor the boxer, Macduff the boxer, Gulliver the boxer, Olaf the St. Bernard, Inga the St. Bernard, Orphe the Newfoundland, and then the Berners, Allie, Alfie, Tucker, Cassie, and Yukon, and now, of course, beloved Great Pyrenees Sam. The theme, of course, is while Claire loved dogs broadly, she had a special fondness for the giant breeds that were more like the size of a dining room table and could be groomed with a lawnmower. One of my favorite memories of Claire is after we lost Chuck and Cassie and Yukon, she and Cathie were very, very briefly without a dog. And some of us, I'll say scolds, and shamefully, I'm one of them, we knew what they should get. A nice, small lap dog, something easy, not challenging. Well, of course, it was preposterous because Cathie and Claire had already done their online research, and they ran into Sam. And Sam was a dog that deserved hugely better than he had previously experienced. And there was no question they were going to adopt the dog that needed them, not the dog that was easy. And the testament to that, who can forget Cassie when her hip dysplasia really made her somewhat immobile. They got her a wheelchair. Chuck trained her to use it, and she could enjoy life in Lincoln Park again, tooling around in her chair. And I think strapping her in and teaching her to use it and letting her keep her joyful life was nothing but pure love. So, of course, now I wonder what's next. It's unknowable. But the idea of Claire resting in peace doesn't sound quite right. She's too big, she's too energetic. And what I think, or like to think, is that she's watching over all of us, family first, but the rest of us generally, meeting up with friends and family that she's loved and lost, enjoying Chuck again in an up-close and personal way, and of course, reconnecting with every dog she ever loved in whatever Lincoln Park happens next. And I don't know about Claire's religion, but I really believe that would be heaven for her. Thank you. Next, Dee Gibson is going to talk to us about Pete's Coffee.
Thank you. So I'm Dee Gibson, and I felt very honored when Cathie asked me to speak on behalf of a true community. And, you know, we've heard so much about Claire at Los Altos High School and her dog world, but another community that was very important to both Chuck and Claire and their big dogs was Pete's Coffee. And Pete's is truly a community, but a community is only the people that make it up. And clearly Chuck and Claire and their big dogs were at the heart of that community. So I asked people who have known the entire family, some for a number of years, some for not as many years, you know, what are some of the key things that they would like me to talk about in sort of as a remembrance of Claire. And I think I can kind of summarize it in words that have come through in every single presentation today, which is dedication and determination. She was truly, both Chuck and Claire were truly the consummate educators. I mean, we knew them long after their years at Los Altos High School, and I am still very involved at Los Altos High School and know the legacy that she left there in the English department. But you know, we would hear about their summer institutes that they would put on, that I think they would start planning the moment one had finished. They were already planning the next year's institute, where they were going to have it, who were going to be the presenters, what were the subjects. So that was a really important part for them to, you know, really keep their hand in being professional educators. There is no doubt that they were very devoted to their family and to Cathie, to the nieces, as well as their dog family. There is a true dedication there. And they were very dedicated to making sure that every single person who came into Pete's was welcomed. And that extended to the baristas, who, you know, one who still is there, was really hoping to come today. But, you know, it wasn't just the people who were there who, you know, joined them in coffee, but it was the people who worked there, and everybody knew them. We also know of Claire's determination. There was nothing that was going to stop her. And even when she was not feeling as healthy, she was determined to come, and we were going to talk politics. There was no doubt about it. And she had a very strong point of view, of which most of us shared. So that was not difficult, and we welcomed all of those discussions. And we know that she was dedicated and determined her loyalty to her Armenian roots. And Lucy, who only met her sort of later in life, I think just really enjoyed that bond of friendship. And every Christmas, we would try to get together as Pete's people and go to Enchanté to enjoy an evening together. And the last couple of years, it was sheer determination on the part of Claire to get there. And we were just so thrilled that we were able to do it this last year. It was a very special moment with Cathie and Claire. And as Barbara was saying, I think a sheer determination was that when they had no dog, there was nothing that was going to deter Claire from getting yet another big dog. One that people were very concerned was perhaps not a good fit, but that dog is the luckiest dog in the world. So, and has come such a long way because of Cathie and Claire's love. So thank you all, and thank you for asking me. So I now am going to start to introduce the family. And the first person who is going to be speaking is Jackie.
Jackie and Claire.
Jackie and Claire.
Someone left a phone up here. I'm not sure if that's to remind me to be short and 11 coming. All right. So this afternoon, we've heard so many loving accounts of Claire Lucine Pelton's amazing life and contributions. As a mother, wife, aunt, educator, colleague, friend, dog, and book lover, she was a force. Several of you have already said that. Claire and her Armenian middle name, Lucine, both translate to bright light. I think we can all agree she was a bright light in our world. So we co-sisters, Jacqueline Lucine and Claire Ann, would like to share a bit about Mrs. Pelton after the closing of the academic day, which is how we remember our Aunt Claire. So after many years of a life spent in the hallowed halls of Los Altos High School and Homestead High School for our Uncle Chuck, the Pelton family's life changed when the Cope sisters became wards of the California court system and custody was assigned to our mother's sister, Claire Pelton. Overnight, a smoothly oiled machine of three, Claire, Chuck, and Cathie Lucine Pelton, became a family of five. Cathie was around 11 years old, Claire, myself, was about 9, and Jackie was 7 years old. The Culp sisters' response to this? We get to live with Cathie. Also known as she who has a horse. Every young girl's dream, right? Except maybe for my Auntie Claire, who actually went to school back in the day with Johnny Mathis. So many former students here today may not think much about the teachers' lives before and after the school day. Claire Pelton's normal 5 a.m. start suddenly involved being the fashion police, a short order cook, and a drill sergeant. She soon had us all on an assembly line, which is the only way that 3 girls can share a single bathroom and get out the door so that she could make it to Los Altos High School on time. After a day of academic rigor with James Joyce, Shakespeare, and Flowers for Algernon, she taught us the art of conversation, and we would share our days around the dinner table. So, the Culp sisters and Cathie know a lot more about all of you than you might think. So dinner time with the Peltons meant one kid sets and clears the table, one kid washes, and one kid dries the dishes. Kind of similar to writing an introduction, having a body of content, and a closing paragraph for most of you. Then we'd rotate, rinse, and repeat. Actually, when I first wrote that, I didn't have the word rinse in there, but she made me add it for alliteration. Mealtime conversation with Aunt Claire was filled with kid landmines. We learned how to use well versus good, lie versus lay, and how to avoid descriptive terms like thingy. It is hard to think of Claire Pelton without her lifetime companion, Chuck Pelton, known to all of us as Unc. True to form, if one of us needed grammatical elucidation, Unc was there backing her up to make sure that our pronunciation was rock solid. Not many children are raised with a couple who could recite Dylan Thomas and Shakespeare at the dinner table. Fortunately for Cathie, we came along and gave her some cover and distraction from Shakespeare. So then, every night from about 8 p.m. to midnight, Aunt Claire and Unc would retire to their study to grade papers, prepare lesson plans, and write college recommendations. Many of you here today have a college recommendation written by Claire Pelton. Over the years, she wrote hundreds. And Cathie, Jackie, and I can tell you, she did not recycle. Each student was unique and special to her, and so your recommendations were as well. So, after midnight, on occasion, on some evenings, Auntie would finish her day of high literature with her preferred fun reading, usually Dean Koontz or Stephen King. No serial murder, horror, or mystery novel was too adventurous or gruesome for Claire Pelton. Speaking of horror stories, adjustments, challenges, once the Culp sisters invaded the Peltons' lives. As the years passed, Claire Lucine Pelton had a few of those because of us. I would summarize them in the general categories of health and wellness and teenage etiquette. Health and wellness first. So the Klutzy, and I mean Klutzy Culp sisters, were not as coordinated as their cousin Cathie. In fact, even last night with some lovely college board members, I managed to knock a glass of wine all the way across the table, and Jackie inadvertently hit Cathie in the face. Guilty. So our klutziness caused Los Altos High School's school office to get a few phone calls. One call to the school office was for the time Jackie fell down a flight of stairs. Actually, she went over the second floor balcony onto the first floor, and Aunt Claire had to be called to school. Another time, Aunt Claire came home to all the clothes in her walk-in closet being on the floor. Evidently, the pole holding the hangers is not designed for pull-ups by kids avoiding homework. And Jackie fell in the campfire the first night of the Yosemite backpacking trip Uncle Chuck took us on. After Auntie's parting words to him as he drove off the hill, "Chuck, Chuck, don't let Jackie fall in the fire." I just have to point out at this point that most of the stories seem to be about me instead of her. Apparently this is an author's privilege. So then there was the night that Aunt Claire and Unc took a much-deserved date night that ended early. I think Cathie will remember this one. The runt of the litter, that was me, decided to lock Cathie, Lucy, and Claire Ann out of the house while they were skinny dipping in the pool. And after I took their towels hostage, I went and I turned on every single light in the house. Anyway, Claire Ann did have a bit of a weight problem in those days. There you go. And on one occasion, she ate all of Cathie's Oreo cookies one afternoon. Aunt Claire came home after school and asked Claire very gently if she knew who ate all the cookies. Claire, of course, who said no, not realizing that she had a cookie crumb mustache at the time that betrayed her. So one of Claire's greatest gifts to us all, and I think we've commented about it a little bit here today, is her sense of humor. And she really imbued us all with a strong sense of humor in our family. At some point, we never realized that this became sort of a survival tool for us. And what a great legacy. I think everyone in this room has probably experienced her sense of humor at some point, and we've heard today how you've thought back on that. Unfortunately for Aunt Claire, our early experimentations and explorations with humor started around the dinner table. All of us girls, for example, taking fresh crab legs and pulling the tendons and scratching each other, things like that. But still, it was just a very special time. Moving on to that, to next things, we had to learn, obviously, because of the crab leg thing, manners. We needed to learn better manners. And particularly, we needed to learn better phone manners. So back in the days of landlines only, all three of us the girls had access to the phone when adults were not home. And especially before Aunt Claire got back from Los Altos High School. So she quickly taught even Jackie to answer Pelton residents. And if we were asked our identity, we would respond with the nominative case, this is she.
Some discipline was required until we mastered phone techniques and other etiquette. Auntie had to give Claire and I a good talking to after we pretended to be Cathie when her boyfriends called. And I'm afraid, and I'm still sorry about this, okay, maybe just a little bit. You know, we made smoochy noises in the background. And then there was the time that we popped our heads up from behind the sofa during a date goodbye at the front door for Cathie. And I will admit that maybe Auntie's discipline was required more than once.
And then last but not least, there was this challenging phone dynamic for Mrs. Pelton. The caller would call the house and ask for Claire. We would then inquire, do you want big Claire or little Claire? Especially with male callers, this seemed to cause a lengthy hesitation. Most memorably followed by a Southern gentleman colleague responding, the more mature Claire.
So we didn't realize it at the time, but Auntie's greatest gift to us was in keeping our family together and giving us a lifelong sister and Cathie. I hate it when you're right. Yeah. It is such an honor to remember Auntie Claire, and that is how all of us need to keep her light shining. It won't be that hard. Okay, I'll just take it. It won't be that hard, as she is in our speech, our writing, our organizing of our thoughts, and as a result, in our everyday actions.
Thank you, Auntie. We love and miss you bunches.
Alexa, where are you? I tried to find you to hug you earlier today and I missed you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am Alexa Burr, and Grandma Claire and Grandpa Chuck were my grandparents, clearly. Thank you to Cathie for having us today. My mom and I are so honored to be here, and thank you for asking me to say a few words today. So I grew up in New York, and so we didn't get to see our grandparents all that often, but thankfully my dad's job as an NCAA referee was helped us come out and visit, so we got to know Cathie and our grandparents and all of their dogs quite often. And their love of dogs was certainly passed down to my dad and our family. I remember him always wanting a Bernese Mountain Dog, but I think my mom talked him out of that, so we settled for Golden Retrievers. And one of them named Giggles, who I know my grandfather absolutely loved. And it was so great to see he and my dad together with their love of dogs. So whenever we would visit we would get all sorts of questions about schooling, what we were learning from elementary school up until college. I do remember one of our trips out here, I think before I was even in high school. Grandma Claire wanted to show us Stanford and brought us to the university, showed us around the campus, was lobbying hard for us to go to Stanford, even when I wasn't even sure what college was at that point. My brother and I decided to go to Georgetown instead, but she always had so many questions, was always so interested in our lives, which was a welcome, knowing that we were so loved by her and she was so interested in what we were doing and learning. I had the opportunity to come out and visit with she and Cathie a few years ago, spent some really great quality time, and shared a lot of memories. One of my favorite things about them was learning about their travels. I remember one of their big trips to Ecuador. They came back and actually put together a scrapbook for us, showing us all sorts of the cultural activities that they did. And now I travel quite a bit in my work life, so when I was out visiting, we shared so many stories about my travels, and I started emailing her after each of one of my trips, whether it was Peru, Saudi Arabia, telling her about some of my stories. And it was a really nice way for me to connect with her. She always had some interesting perspectives and questions about the trips, and that was really special to me to be able to have that connection with her. She was always so welcoming and kind to my dad, to all of us in our family. So I am so happy to see everyone in this room here and to really know how much she is loved. Academics, hearing all of her students, she would be so happy knowing that you all are here and taking a lot of what she gave to you in your lives now. So thank you very much, Cathie. Thank you everyone for being here. And I will turn it back over to you.
I just want to say thank you all for being here today to honor my mother. And let me see, where's my speech? There was such an outpour of love and solace and gratitude for my mother. Each reflection and notation was special, insightful, and deeply endearing. Mom and Dad were truly amazing people. They were never satisfied with their thirst for learning. They loved to travel, they loved people, they loved children, they loved elders, they loved animals. They loved all of you very, very much. I was very fortunate to have time with my mother in her last years. We were able to realize each other's past strife and happiness much better. It was a treasure few people have an opportunity to experience. I will always love her. She is my forever companion. And moving right along, I wanted to thank some people today. First of all, Claire and Jackie and their families for their endlessly thoughtful and loving and endearing presentation of Auntie's life. And thank you for your wonderful words. They were very wonderful. And Alexa Bird for coming all this way on her enthusiastic endeavors in her career, which literally take her all around the world. I am very, very appreciative of having her and her mother Andrea come all this way. Bless you both. Lee Shahinian and Sylvia Talarico for tremendous unending help and assistance in all areas. All of the speakers, Matt McConnell and Jerry Hearn and Rick Bale, whose tireless energy and steadfast assistance helped make this moment possible. Paul and Sharon Heinrich for their ever thoughtful and kind behind-the-scene assistance. And the College Board people were just wonderful at the dinner last night. Bless you all for that wonderful dinner. Barbara Goodrich and her sister Lynn for sweet sentiment and deeply caring precision with which they created the most beautiful program. Harvey Letman for a very well thought out and incredibly creative video presentation of my mother. Al and Sunoco Rooney, whose ego, delightful charm, and their social demeanor facilitate people's journey through the parking lot to the Grand Oak Room. Lindsay Carpenter and her delightful, thoughtful tutoring on the basic planning of her very thoughtful connections like Mary Jo Price for the facility. Peggy Hennessy for her delightful demeanor in answering facility questions. Sylvia Talarico and so many others at Los Altos High School and Creekside Oaks who helped me very much plan this event. Thank you, everyone. Event planner, Sarah Martinez, who I cannot begin to express how thankful I am for her navigation and planning of this moment, and Adonia and her.
The first is the 23rd Psalm, which is written by King David. David lived about 1050 BC, and he was a shepherd boy in the area around Judea. So it's not surprising that his words would be written as a metaphor for his relationship to God, in the sense of him being the lamb and God being the shepherd. The 23rd Psalm is this: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the path of his righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." And finally, she asks that the Lord's Prayer be read. This is according to the Gospel of Matthew, who says that at the time Jesus was teaching in the area of Galilee, and he said, "Master, teach us to pray." And Jesus said, "Pray this way. Pray then in this way. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also forgive those who are our debtors. And do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen." Here's Cathie.
And two of us are going to read the poems.
Oh, you are?
Yes, yes. And Sally's going.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
If that's okay. Sure. Did she especially want these poems?
Yes.
She did. She designated these poems. So if you will, I'll do, do you have your phone? I didn't know I was doing this. I will do them both if you would like me to. No, I'll do one after. Okay, all right. This is Dylan Thomas's "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night."
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words have forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in Green Bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight and learned too late they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Brave men near death who see with blinding sight. Blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. and you, my Father, there on that sad height. Curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
It'll take me a minute to find the other part. I can almost do it by heart, but
Both of us were English teachers, and we worked for Claire doing College Board workshops, and so we had a special affinity for Claire because she was an English lit teacher, and Ivor Sanderson and Sally Pfeiffer were also English literature teachers, and so I came down from Spokane, Washington to be here. Iris lives here in California. While she's looking this up, I'm getting you background because I didn't know I was coming up. But she was, it was just, she was a remarkable person. All of us, Milagros and Mona and John and George, and if I forget somebody, and Betsy and Sharon and Paul, all of us, as we worked with her and worked for her, she was a great boss in that area as well. She was so much fun to be with at all times. Got it?
there's the analysis of it. There's the summary of it.
Which one is that?
Death be not proud.
Oh, Death be not proud.
Though some have called thee mighty and dreadful.
I almost know it. It's
There it is.
only 14 lines, so hang on.
I got it.
Okay.
Death be not proud. Death, be not proud, though some have called thee mighty and dreadful, for thou art not so. For those whom thou thinkest thou dost overthrow die not, poor death, nor yet canst thou kill me. From rest and sleep, which but thy picture be, much pleasure then from thee much more must flow. And soonest our best men with thee do go, rest of their bones and soul's delivery. Thou art slave to fate, chance, kings, and desperate men, and dost with poison, war, and sickness dwell. And poppy or charms can make us sleep as well. And better than thy stroke, thy swellest, why swellest thou then? One short sleep past, we wake eternally, and death shall be no more. Death, thou shalt die. Since Claire specifically wanted these to be read today, we rushed this together.
And now I want to thank Eric Rayburn for a beautiful song that he recorded on saxophone.
So as we turn on the projector and get this started, thank you so much for being here. And I didn't know Claire, I only met Cathie, but I feel like I'm walking away knowing exactly who she was and what a wonderful gift she was to the world, and to teach students to love and to have passion for that. So thank you. Thank you for that. We have just 2 announcements. The centerpieces that you have on the tables, you can feel free to take those home if you would like. The books have owners, so please leave the books on the tables. Their owners will be taking those home. Thank you so much to each and every one of you who brought the books to share, to represent the love that you have for literature.